Hi, my name is David Wetton, and welcome to the Conscious Leadership Now podcast. The intent of this podcast is to encourage you as a leader to embrace conscious leadership by giving you access to some of the world's leaders in the field of conscious leadership, both in practice and in thought. My heartfelt wish is that you leave this podcast feeling inspired with ideas to take away and implement in your business or organization to make a real difference in our world. And my guest today is Hema Vyas. Hello, Hema.
Hi, David. Great to be here.
It's wonderful to have you on the show.
Thank you.
Now, Hema's mission is to provide a direct experience of the power of the heart and move people into what she uniquely terms as a state of gold. In her words, nothing can tarnish or destroy the sustainable and highly valuable element of gold. So when we excavate all that is not who we really are, we become invincible in our true selves. For 27 years, she's been practicing as a psychologist, spiritual mentor, retreat leader, and speaker. Hema is a renowned speaker on the subjects of heart wisdom, human consciousness, spirituality, health, energy medicine, and the science of Ayurveda. Hema's work is about connecting ancient wisdom to solve the problems of modern times, especially by understanding the significance of the heart. In corporate and leadership development, Hema helps leaders find their true selves and guides them to know and experience the truth and wisdom of their own heart. She enables leaders to become more open and honest so they can achieve individual expressions of fulfilment and success. And her employee development program gives delegates a chance to see and experience how heart energy impacts them personally and professionally, and how they can channel their heart to transform their lives and become outstanding performers in the workplace. Hema leads international retreats, which are fully immersive workshops and events that align and restore heart, mind, and body. In 2019, she was a keynote speaker at the Conscious Living and Working Conference in Dublin. She also led a Heart Wisdom workshop series at London's Soho House. And with all that, I just want to say, Hema, I'm really looking forward to hearing what you have to say about conscious leadership, and it's truly wonderful to have you here on the show.
Thank you so much, David. It's so wonderful to be here. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Me too. And that was Take 5 by the David Wetton Quartet, which means that it's my cue for you, Hema, to take 5, your take on 5 conscious leadership questions. And my first question is, what does conscious leadership mean to you?
So, gosh, that's a really broad subject, something I'd love talking about, because there are so many qualities that go into having conscious leadership. But I guess if I was to put it in a nutshell, David, I would say that it's really, really about recognizing the interconnectedness of everything and everyone. So every action that we take has a ripple effect. And so for conscious leaders, I think they need to recognize the importance that what they do is not only being seen and observed by other people, but also it sets precedents and it has a ripple effect. So it's important that they recognize that, and also the bird's eye view aspect. It's about recognizing that you have to take the broader picture, the holistic picture, and not just about the one focus, because every business has one focus in terms of what it is their vision is. But I think conscious leadership for me is about being able to see beyond the horizon and look at the impact it's going to have across the board, so that choices that they make, decisions that they make, come from a much deeper place than just what their business initiative might be.
Gosh, wonderful. There's a lot in that, actually. And I wanted just to pick up on I think what you call the interconnectedness that the conscious leader understands. And I think those listening I think possibly all of them will have experienced what I call the silos within business, where actually they operate in silos, and even in the business functions, they don't really interconnect. So what do you see as the role there of the conscious leader if they've got silos within the business? How does interconnectedness work from your perspective?
So this is where I feel the power of the heart is so important, and it's understanding what that is and understanding how that works, David. So a lot of experiments have been done with heart energy, and it sort of goes beyond sort of walls, and it goes beyond space, and it is almost quantum. And so, I feel like the more people recognize the importance of heart energy and how it works, then they are able to tune into an intention to connect without necessarily having to connect, if that makes sense. And that's what I would say, that, that's why I'm so encouraged to get out there and start talking about it, because especially now with people living, sort of more and more in isolation, and, there was a statistic which said about sort of 50% of adults are sort of living in some sort of isolation, not seeing families, and, just with the partner or whoever they might be living with. And that's quite a big statistic. And so when we connect to the power of the heart, it connects people no matter what's going on. And so even if you are in, London, and let's say I was in New York, for example, when we tune into the energy of the heart, we're able to tune into each other's intentions and connections. So for business, I think that's so important, because it's not about location, it's about the intention.
Wonderful. And on that basis, what do you say perhaps to an exec, or he or she says, do you know what, I'd love to do this sort of work with my department, but I know that department XYZ, they're just not interested in the heart. How will I be able to actually positively interact with them if I do this work on the heart with you? What difference will it make if they're not interested or they're not taking part in it?
Again, this is the power of the heart. It doesn't really matter, because there's a communication that goes on. We're all communicating with each other, whether we're conscious of it or not. So I think, again, it's about leadership, David, because, when you are doing something with an intention and you're leading the way, others don't have to immediately follow. They don't have to follow at all, because when you're doing something and it gets results and there's an impact, a positive impact, I think it's natural and organic that others will begin to sort of think, well, what's going on there? We want to know. So that's one way that, it really doesn't matter if other people are not necessarily interested. But the other way I would say is that as we raise our vibration, I do think the higher vibration is what's going to have an overall impact. And so when we connect to the power of the heart, our vibrations organically increase. And so therefore, the fact that you're increasing your department or your own vibration is going to have an effect. It's going to have a ripple effect.
Thank you. That's a great answer. And there's 2 points that I want to just comment very quickly on that. The first, and we may have spoken before about this on our previous call, in that, of course, the work of, I think it's Dr. David Hawkins, would support this aspect of, if a department was working on the heart resonance, that would help this connectivity. His work, his book Power versus Force, would support that. And the second thing that came to my mind from one of my traditions, it's the Celtic Christian tradition, or I should say Christian tradition, is actually when the desert fathers and desert mothers in the early first centuries set up in the desert, literally their heart resonance attracted people to them because they wanted to know what was going on, what was happening. And often, a small village would set up amongst them because people were drawn to the resonance they held. So also, as you were speaking, I felt that as well, that let me just choose, let's just call it the sales department. If they were working on heart, it'd be really curious if people say, actually, what's happening in that department? There's a difference to it. There's a sense of joie de vivre, or there's something there that is pulling me in.
Absolutely. I love that. And, that's what I feel is that, these eternal truths sort of transcend, any cultural thoughts, feelings, or beliefs. It's so wonderful to hear that there's similar stories, no matter what the background, because I think there's a real truth in that. And that's where we've slightly lost the way, where we've, the heart's light has become so dim that we're not organically sort of attracting the tribes and what's needed. And so in business terms, that the hiring the right people, or being drawn to the right jobs, or the right partners, in terms of who you partner and collaborate with. And so I think it's a real important concept now that people need to see and feel for themselves how it works, because this is really old, ancient knowledge that I'm sort of really talking about. And as you just described, this is ancient knowledge.
It is. And just finally, thank you on that, because I think, again, you've raised another important point, that I think when organizations move into this space, they then resonate with who they're choosing to partner with, because actually want to hold on, I believe, to this resonance. Because for me, one of the reasons around the conscious leadership is it makes a difference for the greater good of all. And therefore you want to connect in with those who are on a similar journey, I believe.
Absolutely. And again, it's the sort of, we are greater than the sum of our parts. So the more people come together with an intention to sort of be here for the greater good, I think that the more traction it will gain.
I'm sorry, I keep saying one final thing, but actually another image that came to my mind is that as you do this work, you spoke early on about a ripple effect. So I can almost see, if them working with what we call stakeholders, their suppliers or whatever, this ripple effect then moving out, because it's not just their staff or their employees, it's the people, it's all the people that they interact with that are then have this sense of, actually there's something happening, and which for me is part of the heartfelt beauty and the importance of this work.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So my second question is, Hema, how do you express conscious leadership through your work?
So I've been on a journey myself, and so everything I talk about, David, is things that I have directly experienced or witnessed in my own life. And I've been through, I've been where other people have been. I've been in an organization where, I just didn't feel my value was truly seen. I mean, they appreciated me and could see I was so much more than the role that I was playing, but they didn't know what to do with me. They didn't know where to put me, so they sort of kept me on because they just liked me, but they weren't getting the most out of me. And for me, I think that was a big lesson, because I think that now people in work, it's not just about what they're doing in terms of the production, in terms of producing the work that they're doing, but it's about happiness. It's about actually genuinely feeling motivated to be there every day. It's not enough just to show up at work. There has to be something in it for both parties. And so that was something that I learned. So I show up for myself first and foremost, and then I'm able to speak with such authority because I know what I'm talking about, because I've been on that journey. And one of the things that I think that I'm really proud of myself with, David, is that, I have always listened to my heart. Even though sometimes a lot of people have been against it and said, well, you can't do that, that's never going to, in fact, I remember 15 years ago, people were like, well, you can't talk about the heart. And it's like, well, why not? That's what I'm going to do. So that's what I've been talking about for many, many years. And now, somebody like yourself, for example, it's not a big thing. You're going, yeah, of course we can talk about the heart and business. But, once upon a time, I would say it was definitely frowned upon. And lots of people in business were saying, that's just not going to cut it. And I've stood by what I've believed. And I think that's part of conscious leadership, that, if you truly believe in something and it comes from a deep place of knowingness, then you have to have the courage to follow through, because time will follow you. Yeah.
Thank you. And you're quite right. I think it does take courage to follow through, and I think that's part of the journey. I think which some refer to as a hero's or a heroine's journey. That
Yes.
there is a point, isn't there, where I think you probably make more than one choice, but I think there is a point where you choose to step out, because I think conscious leadership, or in particularly expressing it and embodying it, is a choice, I believe.
It is. Absolutely, because, well, I think it requires a certain level of commitment, because there is courage involved, because you're leading the way, and and others may not agree at first.
That's exactly it, isn't it? I think
Yes,
that you may not be what we might term as fully seen to start off with. So it is a decision to say, this is what I'm choosing to do.
absolutely.
So we've been talking really about embodiment. So on your journey, who for you is or has been an exemplar of embodied conscious leadership, and why?
So the person that comes to mind, and I don't know if everybody would be familiar with her, but is Amma. She's yeah, I can see you with
Yes,
a smile. Yeah,
yes, I
you
do.
you
Yeah.
know who I'm talking about. And the main reason is because she did something that money couldn't buy. And that is part of my philosophy, that when we come from the heart, the bottom line is not the most important thing. The top line is what's important. When we have a vision and a strong connection to that vision, then I do believe that heaven and earth can be moved to make it happen. And the reason why I think that Amma embodies conscious leadership so well is because she doesn't preach anything that she doesn't do herself. And the government, I don't know if you know the story, but the Indian government sort of tried to pay a lot of people who sort of would be considered sort of quite in need in India, to clean up these sort of really um, sort of dirty, sort of streets, and where there was so much dirt and garbage and rubbish, and even though they were willing to pay people, it couldn't get done. And then Amma, through just her following through, sort of just hugging and loving people and being there for people, just called upon all the people to say, come and do it. And she was the first one in and the last one out. And it was so amazing, because so many places got cleaned up, and that's what I feel it's about. It's about sort of doing something that you are willing to do, and then others will follow, whatever that is, and having a really pure vision and intention for what it is you want to achieve.
Yes, and I did smile. I do know Arma. I've not met her, but actually I know a couple of corporate friends who've gone when she's come here to London and have visited, and also one of my colleagues. A shout out to Jules Lewis. She actually helps organises Amma's trips when she comes. So, and she's also in the corporate world. So she certainly makes an impact, and to take that sort of energy into the workplace, in my view, is something which is dearly needed at this time.
Absolutely.
And the sort of second part of this question that I have is, I spoke about conscious leadership being a journey, so as an exemplar of embodied conscious leadership. But one of the other elements is, what resources have you come across and found helpful on your conscious leadership journey?
Resources. So I think education is key. We don't have to always reinvent the wheel, because there are lots of people who have done it, and so you may have one thing that you're sort of leading the way with, but other people are leading the way with so many other things. So I think, for me, things like podcasts, for example, but learning. I'm an avid learner. I'm an avid student. I would spend the rest of my life just studying and teaching, studying and teaching. Um, I think that the more education people can get on any subject, because it doesn't have to be in your field necessarily, because the more informed you are, the better decisions you're able to make in life. And I think for me to be able to work with such diverse types of people, from CEOs to, managers to, somebody who runs their own business, an entrepreneur, whoever it might be. I think part of what's helped me is that I have, one, experienced lots of different things. I've experienced diversity in my own work, but I've also sort of constantly been educating myself on different sort of things. And that's allowed me to be a voice that they can trust if I am speaking to somebody, teaching somebody, running a workshop, whatever it might be.
I totally get that. And actually, one of the kind of follow-up questions I wanted to ask is, because you spoke about the importance of learning, and my sense from you is it's a very embodied experience. It's got to be in the heart, hasn't it, with heart and the whole body. But what I wanted to ask was, obviously, with you, I've spoken about you being a psychologist, a spiritual mentor, retreat leader, speaker, having all of this knowledge. But my question was, quite often, or sometimes, I guess, some leaders may go away on retreats, or they may go and see a psychologist outside of the workplace. And it can be something that's done, if that makes sense, outside the workplace. So I go on, let's say, I don't know, let's call it a Buddhist retreat. I do that outside of work. I go and see, psychologist. I do that outside of work. So when you go into the workplace, how do you combine those so actually it makes sense for them in the workplace? Because what I think is sometimes the two areas don't meet. How do you bring those? We talked about interconnectedness. How do you practically bring those together in the workplace?
So it slightly goes back to a couple of things we've talked about, when we talked about the resonance of the heart. And I think, again, one of the things that I've noticed is, people who've come on my retreat outside, as an independent person rather than part of a kind of a corporate retreat, is that they go and people are curious. What's changed? What's happened? It's more than just a holiday. And I feel like it's about embodying the shifts that happen when you go on a retreat, whether it's sort of a meditation retreat or yoga or Ayurveda or detox or whatever it might be, but also allowing it to be sustainable. And for me, I think sustainability, really comes from a practice that I encourage everybody to continue long after the work with me is done, whether it's a retreat, whether it's a workshop, whether it's, we've done a private session, whatever it might be. And the two are meeting now more and more, David. Once upon a time, you couldn't talk about hard or meditation or even yoga if you go back, to last sort of decade. But now I think it's become part of the norm. And what I found as well, that, when people have come independently, they've gone back, and a lot of people have been curious, number one. And secondly, a lot of people have come out and said, I've been doing something similar. It's just not talked about in the workplace. But I think people are pursuing these paths on their own because they recognize that there has to be something more to life than what might have been there before they had some other discipline.
Thank you. And it's my intuitive sense that, and I'll ask you this question, that actually when you go into the workplace, there may be one or two individuals who take you in, a senior leader. But I'm guessing, as you just said, you probably, or perhaps they are surprised by perhaps the number of people who then show an active interest because actually I've been doing meditation, or I've been doing yoga, or I've been doing whatever, and they didn't know.
Absolutely.
Rest of the organization,
Yeah, absolutely. I really feel that that's true, that they are often surprised. And in fact, it's a little bit like coming out. They're sort of like, oh, I had to come out and just say that, I'd been seeing a psychologist or a mentor, or, or I went on a retreat, or I'm doing a workshop, or, whatever it might be. And then they're surprised at the number of people. Some people very openly, other people have sort of taken them to the side and said, oh, can I ask you, for this person's number, or I'd like more details. So it is on the increase, and I think that's a really positive thing.
It is, isn't it? And I think from my perspective, it means that actually people have, I'm going to say permission, but permission to bring their whole self to work. And as you said, to speak about that, not only just speak about it, the joy of knowing that there's someone else perhaps in the room or in the meeting that kind of says, yeah, actually I practice with this teacher or that teacher, and really have a conversation that makes a difference in the workplace. Because I think there's something, isn't there, about then the energies lift in the room, or there's something about actually it's okay for me to be who I am. And it's almost like an unlocking for me that they then in some way allowed to bring even more of themselves into the workplace, because this bit has been seen, so they can bring another bit.
Absolutely. And that's so important,
Mm.
because we shouldn't be compartmentalizing who we are, especially if we're spending that much time at work or around work colleagues. I think it's so important to be able to share all of who we are. And it's not necessarily that there has to be big declarations, but I think, it's something that should be celebrated so that they can openly say, I've got to go now because I've got a
Mm.
class where I'm going to be doing this, wonderful thing, or whatever it might be. But I really feel that, yes, it's so important for the whole self to show up. I
It
love that
is.
phrase.
It is, isn't it? And I think it makes such a difference, to the work, and so many benefits, not just for productivity, well-being, efficiency, and the sense of being part of a community which cares and where they feel they belong and they can make a difference. Wonderful. So I guess linked to this one, really, because we've touched a little bit on spiritual practices. My next question says that research, and it was research by Professor Jodie Fry, suggests that an inner life is the source of conscious leadership, where inner life is a form of spiritual or contemplative or even a reflective practice, including things such as walking in nature, meditation, yoga, as we've mentioned. So you've touched a little bit on this, but for you, Hema, what practices have you found helpful and why?
So my number one practice without fail is meditation. And it is, connecting to the inner life, connecting to the heart, connecting to the truth. It just sets my day up beautifully. So that's, but that's just a sort of box standard for me. That's just part of my everyday life. I think in terms of a practice that I would really say that, people who may not want to dive so deeply straight away, is perhaps, journaling.
Yes.
Because, they say
Mm.
that when you write with your dominant hand, it's your heart speaking. And so, because, for me, it's about giving heart expression, giving the heart an opportunity to express itself, to be heard, and to have a voice in some way. I think writing is a wonderful thing. So it's something that, I've employed that a lot in my own life, and it's something I encourage people to do as well.
That's wonderful. And going back, we touched on desert fathers and mothers, but for me, journaling is an ancient wisdom, practice.
Hmm.
And the people I work with, if they so choose, I do encourage them to journal. And probably, as you know, it is amazing that when they look back on their journal, the sort of things they were saying. And I even had one person who said, David, actually, you know what? I just want to record on my phone because I'm an auditory person. So as I speak along, I'm doing my journaling on my phone. And again, it was amazing. So as he played it back to himself 1-2 weeks later before the session, he was like, whoa, I didn't realize I'd said that, or was thinking and feeling this. I really need to bring this into the session because it was just so, it just seems so important for me. So I think journaling picks up these nuggets, doesn't it, of insights almost on the wisdom of the soul speaking.
Absolutely. And I'm so pleased you mentioned that, because I have that as well when people say, yeah, but I can't write. I'm not a writer. It's just not what I do. And I say, of course we're all different. And so, it's something that they can do nowadays with the phone. You can
Mhm.
record, that's a good way of expressing whatever it is on your mind without any filters. Because
Yes.
that's the key thing, isn't it?
It is the key thing, yes, and it's that essence. I think of once knowing that, wisdom for you has turned up in this journaling in itself can be transformational, because I often say that in my work I seek to release the inner wisdom of the person that I'm working with, and for me journaling is evidence of that inner wisdom, and it often surprises people as to what they unearth in their journaling, which I love.
I do too. And it's amazing when they look back, as you said, the kind of, nuggets they get that they didn't even realize was there. It's just wonderful.
Yes, and definitely, a practice that's, very useful for the workplace, and I guess almost including. I'm trying to think. It's again, it's an ancient one. It's the I'm trying to think of the name of it now, but the Jesuit one where they do a review at the end of the day of how they've done.
Yes.
That in itself has been proved to be useful in the workplace, where a leader or a member staff just sits back and says, how have I showed up in the day? What's been good? What hasn't been so good? So, those sort of things are helpful. So finally, my question is, given unlimited, great one, this one, given unlimited time and resources, Hema, what single thing would you recommend aspiring conscious leaders to do?
Well, I would say perhaps this single thing would be meditation, but I want to make it broader because, that may not always resonate with everybody. But in a broader sense, I would say, be willing to dive inwards, because it is, in order to truly be a leader, you have to be fully connected with yourself. To be a conscious leader, you have to know yourself. And I think we all have edges, we all have blind spots, we all have spaces and places within us that we don't always want to go. But those are the things that impact our ability to be in the world and show up as we need to for others. And as leaders and as conscious leaders, I think we have a responsibility to show up as the best version of ourselves. And so I think in order to do that, every day there has to be some practice where you're willing to go inward and hit those edges, and whatever it takes to really, really bring them to light, bring them to awareness, and reduce them. Because the more we become aware of something, the less impact it has on us, the less negative impact it has on us. And so that's the advice I would give anybody, that in order to truly show up, you have to know who you are.
Thank you. I love that piece of advice. And those who are listening to the show will know that I love Columbo, the detective on TV. And one of his favourite phrases is just one more thing. He always asks a just one more thing question, which turns out quite often to be a key question. So my just one more thing question to you is really, having listened to you saying the importance of commitment and doing a deeper dive, it's an opportunity for you to share your own resources and offerings, which you feel will be helpful to those listening to this podcast.
Thank you, David. That's a great question for me to be able to answer. So one of the things that I have been working on is an online community, and it's for everybody. So there's the sort of private side of it and the spiritual side, but there's also soon to be launched the sort of more business side, so working with corporates, bespoke programs to go in and help with the broader sense of wellness, to help with a number of different things that they may be struggling with, that hard energy, understanding the hard energy, and consciousness will help with whatever issues that they may be dealing with. So that community is an online community called Heart Renaissance, and it's free to sign up and just connect with like-minded people and share or not share, whatever feels comfortable. There's a number of free things on there, and then there will be more sort of workshops and courses, online workshops and courses available. So everything in one place under one roof.
Wonderful. And can people access that through your website?
Yes, they can. But yes, they can.
And for those who've been listening that are perhaps interested in looking at the leadership development side of things, or even your employee development program, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
So I would say via my website. If they go onto my website, I have a page, a contact page. They can just drop me a line, drop me an email, and what we'll do is we'll set up a call to identify what their needs might be, and then we will be able to get in touch with the ways in which we can work with them, or whatever they might need, whether it's individual, whether it's a group, whether it's there are lots of different ways that I work with corporates. So if they drop me a line, then we'll be able to set up a call. That's probably the best way.
Wonderful. And I'll also put your LinkedIn profile
Please.
connection on, so people can obviously connect with you on LinkedIn and see what you're sharing, and even drop you a message if they feel the pull to do that as well.
I would love that, and I would love to connect with any and all conscious leaders that are listening to your podcast. So thank you, David.
No, you're welcome. So, Hema, thank you for that heartfelt invite and really your heartfelt sharing today. And I just personally want to say thank you so much for being on the show, but not only that, but for showing up in what I call the world of conscious leadership in the way that you do. I know that you're on a journey, continue to be on a journey for this, but I just want to honor the inspiring way that you actually be and do this. So thank you.
Thank you so much, David. That was just a wonderful conversation. And, there's a lovely flow. You're obviously a natural and also very heartfelt. So I think that comes across in the conversation that we've had. Thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you. So if you've enjoyed this podcast and my approach to conscious leadership, then please know that I help conscious leaders develop purpose-led, high-performing leadership teams through one-to-one coaching and tailored leadership programs. So if you sense I can help you, then please look me up, David Wetton, on LinkedIn, and let's jump onto a conversation together. And finally, I just want to say to those that are listening, I want to thank actually all the listeners to this podcast. And if you're willing, please do share a link to this podcast with those you think would truly benefit from it. For I truly believe that now is the time for conscious leadership. And with all the inspiring, heartfelt work you as listeners are doing, I have no doubt that conscious leadership will become a thriving reality, making a difference for the greater good of all. So until next time, I'll leave you with a blessing from John O'Donoghue. May the light of your soul bless the work you do with the secret love and warmth of your heart. And so it is.